Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Hello again. So today we have black bananas. Unfortunately, nowadays at the grocery store, they don't last very long. So we are going to make banana bread. Something I haven't mentioned, I don't think, before now is that when I have any kinds of fruits or things that need to be tossed, no food goes into the garbage here. I have a compost bucket, which I keep under the sink, and I have a chicken bucket, which I keep on the counter. And obviously it's a little bit prettier because it keeps on the counter. So in the chicken bucket, they don't like banana peels. Go figure. They love peels from any kinds of melons. That's their favorite. They love popcorn. They love lots of things, but not banana peels. So the banana peels are going to go in the compost pile. And we're going to put the bananas in this big bowl. The very first time I made banana bread, I learned about reading recipes. So I always suggest to people that I talk to now is to read the recipe through 3 times before you actually start baking. The reason you do that is to make sure that you understand the recipe, to make sure you have all the ingredients, and to make sure that you have the time that the recipe requires. Sometimes when you read through something, you don't catch it the first time, so read it a couple times. So my peels are in here. I already put the sugar in this bowl. I'm not going to do the measurements during this recipe because I'm making a double recipe. I will put them below and you'll have them. The oven just says it's 350, ready to go when I'm ready. So we're just going to take a potato masher and we're going to mash the bananas. There's no real reason I have the sugar in here. I just had it in here because I tried to pre-do the ingredients so that I would be more prepared for the video. We'll see how this goes. So we're just going to squish the bananas, and if there's little chunks, it's not a big deal. So bananas are all squished. So I'm going to put all the liquid ingredients in the bowl first. As I usually do, I have the dry ingredients in my sifter. So we have bananas and sugar in here so far. That's all squished. I'm going to add the oil. So this is just regular salad oil. You could use coconut oil, you could use almond oil, you could use whatever you want. You need a little bit of oil to make the bread. You could use butter. You need a little bit of oil to make the banana bread tender. And this is a quick bread. So we're going to mix it up. It's going to go in the oven. It's going to be ready to bake, ready to eat. So we have the oil in there. We have our milk. And to the milk, I use powdered milk, so I've already made this up. And to the milk, I also added, which is one of my secrets, a little bit of almond and a little bit of vanilla. I added enough of the flavoring that it will give the recipe and the bread a little bit of layers of flavor, but it's not going to be, again, in-your-face vanilla, in-your-face almond. The last liquid ingredients I have are eggs. I'm going to use 2 of our homegrown eggs, and I always break my eggs and put them in a little bowl before I put them in the recipe. I don't want shells in my recipe. They are homegrown eggs. They may have a little blood spot in them. If I put it in a bowl, it's not going to go into my rest of my ingredients and ruin it. So I always put them in the bowl one at a time. My eggshells go into the compost. You can put those back, give them back to the chickens. But if you do give them back to the chickens, oh, I got a double yolker. If you do give them back to the chickens, you don't want to give them back to the chickens like this. You would want to crush them up. You could use a regular crusher. If you want to do that, you can put it in the chicken bucket. But you need to make sure they're crushed because you don't want the chickens to take that eggshell and say, hey, look at this. This is a lovely tasting thing. Next time I lay one or my friend lays one, I'll eat it. I put the eggs in with the bananas and the milk mixture and the sugar. While I'm mixing this up, I just want to talk a little bit about quick breads. So quick breads they don't need to be kneaded, and they mix up quick and they bake quick. They're a yummy everyday thing that you can have, and you can use, as I did, the bananas. Now, I had a lot of bananas that were ripe. You can, if you don't want to make that much banana bread at one point, you can actually peel those bananas and put them in the freezer and use them later on for the same thing. Or you can make the banana bread now and freeze the banana bread. You can also use other fruits. You could use cherries. You could use, I've used melons. I've used papaya. So 2 to 3 smashed bananas equals about a cup and a half. So if you want to use a different fruit, just think about substituting the same type thing. If it's a very dry fruit, you may want to add a little bit more milk than what my recipe calls for. I'll make notes of my recipe below so you can see. So if you're going to add cherries, do you want to add almond flavor? Do you want to add vanilla flavor? Do you want to maybe add a little bit of coconut flavor with the vanilla instead of the almond? You don't have to add any flavorings, but you can adjust that too. You could use a rum. Anytime you cook, anytime you bake, when you make anything with multiple ingredients, ingredients can always be switched out. Like I said, the oil could be butter. It could be coconut oil. All of those things are optional. The oil softens the bread, which is why you want to use it. Also, I said that my first making banana bread as a child was my lesson on learning how to read the recipe multiple times. So I'm one of 8 children. My mother gave me lots of freedom when I was growing up to cook in the kitchen. And the first time I made banana bread, I served it to my family, and my mother said, what did you use for salad oil? And I said, oh, you had salad oil in the cupboard. And she said, no. So I went and found salad oil, and it was actually Caro syrup, not salad oil. And of course, the banana bread was that much sweeter. Didn't really ruin the banana bread, but it did teach me to always read the recipe more than one time, make sure I had everything, pull everything out. So I have all my wet ingredients. We have the almond oil. So in my sifter, I have flour, I have baking powder, I have some salt. My other treat, my other trick is nutmeg. I love to put nutmeg in things. Again, it adds just a little bit of extra flavor, another layer that tickles your tongue. And then my almond along with a little bit of vanilla. Most quick bread, banana bread nut recipes aren't going to call for flavorings. I happen to think it adds a little bit to it. So I'm going to sift this in. You don't need to use an electric mixer. You're just going to mix this gently. You can put nuts in here if you want. I happen to have some walnuts that I've chopped up. So you don't want to beat it. You just want to gently mix things together. So I'm not going to use the whisk. So I just put the flour ingredients in here. This is all my dry ingredients. Before I mix this in with my spatula, I'm going to take my chopped nuts and put it in there. The reason I do this is the nuts will get a little bit of the flour coating on them before they go into the liquid mixture. It helps them stay suspended in the bread rather than just all floating to the bottom. So I'm just going to mix this. All my ingredients are in here now. I'm just going to mix this gently until it's well incorporated. My oven is warmed up on 350. I have bread pans over here that I'm going to show you how I prepare them. You can use any size. You could put this in muffin tins. You could put it in a regular size loaf pan. I have some smaller loaf pans, and since it's just Mike and I here right at the moment, I like to use the smaller pans. They're easier to wrap and freeze. And when I pull one out, I know we're probably going to eat the whole thing within a couple days. Another thing, using the smaller pans, you have a lot more crust. So if you like crust, that's the way to go. Alright, so that's mixed up all right. I don't see any flour chunks. You don't need to mix it more than that. You've mixed things in the stages. So here are my bread pans. I have different sizes. I'm going to start with the small ones. Right now I have a little bit of Crisco. It was one of the items that was in my box for my friend. So I'm going to use Crisco. You can use a spray coating. So I have a little bit of Crisco in all the pans. I don't know exactly how many pans I'm going to use because they're different sizes. So I have a couple extra sitting over there in case I need them. I'm going to take a little bit of flour and put it in my pans. And this is how you do it for cake pans also, if you're going to grease and flour, if that's what the instructions say, grease and flour. So the reason I have the jelly roll pan is that when you have this many pans in the oven, it's kind of a pain when you want to rotate, when you want to check them. or if you put in too much dough and it starts to fill over the edge. So many times I use my jelly roll pans to put pans on and stick in the oven. Now I can put this whole pan in the oven on one shelf. Halfway through the cooking, I'll 180 it and everything's good. So I'm going to put the bread in the pans. If you scrape it on the side, you know, you're going to have that little bit of dough on the side. So try to keep it in the middle if you can. It's not that big of a deal. But with this kind of dough, it's fairly thick, so it's easier to keep control of. You want to fill the pans no more than 3/4 full. I would say 1/2 to 2/3. It's nice to have a nice domed top. It's not really nice to have too much of the dough spilling over the sides. I think I'm probably going to need another one of my pans. I've made this bread with cherries. I've made it with papaya. You could do it with zucchini. You can do it with pretty much any kind of fruit. You can do it with any kind of nuts. It's probably going to take about 45 minutes or an hour to bake these. So I'm going to put my timer on 25 minutes and come and check it. And you notice I do have a couple of different size pans. So I'm going to put the bigger of the ones I have on the edge so that they will have a little bit more heat. But I may need to take these 3 smaller pans, or the 4 smaller pans, out of the oven and leave these 2 larger ones in and let cook for a few more minutes. So I'm going to put them in the oven. It's 350. I'm going to set that timer on 25 minutes. I'm going to rotate it 180, and when we're all done, I'll let you know how long it took to cook it. So it's been about 45 minutes. The small pans are definitely done. They're nice and browned. They're not giving too much. I think I'm going to put the large pans back in the oven for a few more minutes. So I'm going to put the small pans over here for a moment, back in the oven for probably just maybe another 7 minutes. Used a butter knife and just moved that around. Separate the edges, pop it out like this. So I'm going to let it sit on its side to cool rather than on the bottom. I found it just doesn't compact the bread as much if you do that. So I'm going to do this with all these loaves. It smells really wonderful. And I don't know if I said before or not, the nuts that I put in are totally optional. You don't have to use nuts. You could leave them out altogether. You could change something like coconut. Add coconut instead of nuts. Those are all beautifully browned. So, toothpick. You've read in recipes before till a toothpick comes clean. I don't know how you can stick it in a pan or in anything and it comes out clean. It's not actually clean. What they mean is that it's not sticky. You don't have a bunch of dough stuck to it. So this is a good time to use it. This is a thicker bread than this. It's a little bit harder to tell. I'm going to stick it in the pan and I pull it out. There's some crumbs, but it pulls out easily. This is obviously not dough in the middle. Raw dough in the middle. So we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to take a butter knife or similar tool around the edges. I think I'll use the other one since this is a little bit larger of a pan. Beauty. We're going to cut one of those smaller loaves in a minute so you can see what it looks like. This is a great recipe to do with kids. Doesn't take a beater, just takes mixing. Doesn't take long to bake. Quick satisfaction. So I'm just going to cut this in half so you can see what it looks like in the inside. It smells so good. So the nuts are floating around in there, not all sunk to the bottom. It smells delicious. The crumb's nice. You'll enjoy it. A little bit of butter, if you want. Another nice thing is a cream cheese spread. You could do a little bit of strawberries with some cream cheese and use that as a spread. It's really good just the way it is, especially warm. I hope you enjoy my banana bread, and I hope you use it as a recipe to add other things. Try different fruits. What do you have that's going bad? Peaches? Strawberries? Too many of them? Make bread out of it. It's lovely. Every time it's different. You can change out the seasonings. If you were going to use strawberries, you could use a little bit of ginger. Anything. Your imagination. And love. Enjoy.